Chapter 1. And City, 6 p.m. The horizon was bathed in delicate shades of pink and purple, with a beautiful glow from the setting sun. In an office building against the sunset, a young, long-haired girl stood up from her seat and stretched lazily, before turning off her computer and preparing to get off work punctually. Shouldering her bag, she had just taken a single step out of the office when she heard her colleagues start discussing their gathering tomorrow. Someone excitedly said, "Everybody has to come, everybody has to." A female colleague looked around and said, "Only Yi and Xiaomeng, one, aren't around, I'll inform them then." "Alright, thanks for doing it." They took stock of who was around, recorded who was missing, and prepared to inform them when they went home. But nobody remembered they still had a colleague called Zhi Wei. It was as if she had never existed in their world. Even if she had just walked out of the door. Zhi Wei walked with quick, light steps, turning a deaf ear to the conversation in the office. It didn't matter whether they remembered her or not. If they didn't remember, she would be saving a bunch of money and having a day of rest where nobody would disturb her anyway. Although she had a lot of such days, but which lowly corporate slave would disdain having free time to rest without anybody disturbing them? Thinking of this, her footsteps got even lighter. Getting off work punctually, a good amount of time to rest, the happiness of a corporate slave was just that simple. She took the train home, ate and showered before she started packing up her house. To her surprise, she found a discount voucher for a barbecue restaurant. Tomorrow was the last day it could be used. Tomorrow was also the weekend, and she didn't need to work. Holding on to the voucher, she felt as if God was rewarding her for her week-long slog at work. Then, how could she refuse? Plan go to Xinghamal and eat barbecue on Saturday, commence. The weather was pleasant on Saturday, with clear skies and a nice breeze. It was the peak of autumn, and the sun rays shining down were warm and comfortable. The nice weather was expected to last the whole day. Zhi Wei sat at the innermost corner of the barbecue restaurant, alone. There weren't a lot of customers inside, nor were there none. The waiters on staff were more than adequate to handle the amount. Even so, Zhi Wei was still forgotten twice, and even though she ordered earlier, her food came even later than a table of guests who came in last. Zhi Wei's attitude was good, not impatient or annoyed. To her, as long as the food came, it was fine. It was useless to stress about whether it came quickly or slowly. After all, she had such a transparent existence. The honey-marinated steak was cut into strips, and the meat sizzled tantalizingly as it was placed on the grill. The air was filled with the fragrance of cooking meat, the scent wafting into Zhi Wei's nostrils and whetting her appetite. She was just about to pick up her chopsticks and dig in when she heard a bzzzt. A notification popped up on her phone as it started chiming incessantly. Unlocking it, she took a look. It was the group chat from high school, talking about the annual reunion dinner. The class leader in charge had already texted each person privately and planned out how many people could attend, reminding them enthusiastically not to forget the date. Chewing on the meat, Zhi Wei looked at the chat with a blank expression. She didn't even have to tap in to know that she was definitely not included in the planning. Because she was definitely going to be forgotten. It was a tale as old as time, repeating every year. This was her special power. Invisibility. Please read at Jolien Lien. WordPress. Com. Invisible to the point that it was a common thing to forget about her. Whether someone could remember her was purely based on luck. If she was in their peripheral vision, people would at least be able to see her. But sometimes, even if she was in someone's peripheral vision, she could almost hear her invisible existence shouting, "I can do it. I'm going to let the heavens know I refuse to lose." Then she would end up continuing to be as invisible as air. The whole world treated her like that, even her parents. But it wasn't completely a bad thing. At least she didn't have to worry that she would have any embarrassing history. At least she didn't have to concern herself with social matters that were unnecessary but still required. At least she didn't have to worry about her off days being taken up. Most importantly, she could save money. To a lowly corporate slave who was broke and could only rely on themselves, of course it would be best to save as much money as possible. Counting the gathering organized by her colleagues and the high school reunion, she had already successfully saved all that money. Thinking about that, her eyebrows lifted slightly in happiness as she placed her phone down and continued eating her grilled meat. And reminded the waiter for the third time to refill her tea. Zhi Wei bought an ice cream cone and walked around the mall as she ate it. She looked lonely as she brushed shoulders with smiling, laughing people walking by. But nobody will notice her. Her strange physique and the air would essentially swallow her up, making her look inconspicuous, as if she never existed. She was actually quite happy about this. She didn't have to care about anybody at all. It was almost as if she was the one who had made the world isolated instead of the other way around. As she walked, she stopped outside of a watch shop and tilted her head to look at the person in the advertisement. Meng Lianyu, a world-renowned actress, was her favorite actress. It was also her dream. Zhi Wei had been an actress for a short period of time previously, and she had dreamt of standing under the shining lights like Meng Lianyu, being looked at and liked by people. Even if the light that shone on her was just a tiny ray, but it was proven that everything was all her own wishful thinking. She couldn't change reality, and she had even less power to change this world, so she could only go back to her boring, insipid life. The strawberry-flavored ice cream melted on her tongue as she was thinking about her old dreams. She suddenly felt unusually cold, as if her limbs were all filled with cold air, resulting in her snapping out of her thoughts. She lowered her head to look at the ice cream cone. It was autumn, she should eat less of such stuff. Counting the days, she should also buy some yarn and prepare to knit the sweaters and scarves she would need for the winter. Knitting it herself would be cheaper than buying it, and her handiwork wasn't too bad either. She purchased what she needed and left the mall, walking toward the bus stand. Even though all throughout her life, she was so outrageously transparent, but thankfully, when it came to traffic safety, she had never truly been transparent. But she didn't know if there would be a day when an accident would pop up. She walked with her eyes trained on her phone as she started recording her expenses in an accounting app. She had bought the yarn while the shop was running a sale, 2 for 1, so she had managed to save money yet again. She took out a coin for the bus fare, feeling her luck today was actually quite good. Actually, with how optimistic she was, every day felt good to her. Even though the world couldn't see her, even though she was as invisible as air. As long as she could live healthily and love herself, life could be just as fulfilling, but nobody would be able to escape the saying, what goes up must come down, too, in their life. She was still feeling happy the previous second, when the next moment, she had just walked to the side of the traffic light when she was knocked over by someone. Her body flailed as her canvas bag dropped to the ground and a bang sounded out. Even a concert wouldn't have been as loud as that sound her head made. A child ran by in a hurry. Please read at Julian Lien. WordPress. Calm, he paused and scratched his head, feeling as if he had bumped into something. Not turning around to look, he ran off again. Leaving Zhi Wei there, her face contorted in pain. The crowd surged forward, the pedestrians walking by her, without even looking at her for more than a second. They wouldn't even think about her, whether she was okay. Only she knew that it hurt like hell. She was afraid of pain, she had been ever since she was young. A slight ache for someone else would be amplified multiple times when it came to her, attacking her nervous system, without mercy. It was as if there were uncountable nails drilling into her entire body without rest. It hurt so badly she wanted to throw up blood and die on the spot. Zhi Wei's heart raged as tears gathered at the corners of her eyes. Wild children were really too hateful. They were the bane of the world. Enemies of the entire galaxy. ZZT ZZT, ZZT ZZT. System notification, successful access. A foreign voice broke her train of thought as her hand trembled slightly. Just now. Did she hear something? System notification, data download complete. That electronic voice rang out again, as if it was isolated from the world, unable to be accessed or caught. It was too sci-fi-esque to be believable. Doubt flooded Zhi Wei's face, but before she could consider this deeper, a bunch of foreign memories flooded her mind. It was like a story, with a beginning and an end, with the main character and side characters, but she wasn't inside. And as for the main characters, she knew them. They were a pair of popular, good-looking new entrants into the acting scene this year, Sang Wan Ci and Cho Luo. She was forced to finish watching Sang Wan Ci and Cho Luo's life, almost like a TV drama, and she didn't know what to feel. In the heat of the moment, she didn't know. System notification, the male protagonist's halo has been connected. Male what? She was utterly dumbfounded, then she heard a clear, soft, mature female voice floating next to her ear. Are you alright? An autumn breeze brushed past as an elegant, fresh fragrance filled the air, gently enveloping Zhi Wei. She lifted her head slowly as she caught a glimpse of a pair of eyes that was as beautiful as the stars. The person in front of her was wearing a black mask and a cap, evidently trying to hide her face. But just based on the half of her face that was exposed, she was already incredibly pretty. At such a close distance, Zhi Wei could recognize her immediately. Sang Wan Ci. Her face had been deeply carved into Zhi Wei's memory, simply because she was too good-looking. She was a slender, ephemeral beauty who had an outstanding bearing. Even the most beautiful sunshine and the holiest moon couldn't compare to her beauty. At such a close distance, her good looks were even more impressive. Nobody would even dare to Photoshop their selfies to look like this, but she could actually be born with a face like this. Sang Wan Ci didn't realize her cover had been blown, bending over and stretching out a hand to pick up the canvas bag Zhi Wei had dropped. Her long hair slid over her skinny shoulder as she leaned over, almost as if she was filming a shampoo commercial. Zhi Wei was still in a daze. Sang Wan Ci handed the bag over to her, as she looked down and finally took it. Inadvertently, she saw a mole on the back of Sang Wan Ci's right hand. It was a tiny one, nestled near her thumb. On the back of her fair and delicate hand, it didn't look out of place at all. Sang Wan Ci reminded her gently, "Your forehead's all red, remember to apply some medicine when you get home." Zhi Wei blinked woodenly as she suddenly heard the cold, mechanical voice in her mind issue an order. Mission issued, tell the female lead, Sang Wan Ci, I like you. Time limit, 5 seconds. 5, 4. Wait, mission? What mission? What the hell is this thing? Why would she suddenly tell Sang Wan Ci, I like you for no reason? Zhi Wei's brain was a mess, and she felt like she was suffocating during those 5 seconds. When the last second was over, an electrical current ran up from her foot, quickly enveloping her whole body as she felt everything go numb. Her legs went weak as she fell forward, towards Sang Wan Ci's embrace. Sang Wan Ci quickly reached out to catch her. Zhi Wei was in so much pain she couldn't speak. She finally calmed down after a while, looking up. Sang Wan Ci was silent. Please read at Julian Lien. WordPress. The atmosphere had gotten weird. You. Sang Wan Ci looked at the person in her arms. She had suddenly fallen onto her and held on tightly, refusing to let her go. Her beautiful eyes narrowed as she came to a conclusion. Are a scammer, 3? Zhi Wei? What sort of conclusion was that? This child has just been shocked by electricity, that's all. Sang Wan Ci thought she was harboring bad intentions, so she took a step back. Losing her support, Zhi Wei's legs went weak again, as if she was going to kowtow to Sang Wan Ci. In the nick of time, she quickly forced herself to support herself on one leg. And then, she performed a kneel with a single knee for Sang Wan Ci. As if she was proposing, Sang Wan Ci. Zhi Wei. Their gazes interlocked. The atmosphere was not only tense, but it was also awkward. The awkwardness Zhi Wei felt at this very instant was everything that she owed over the last 10 years, making up for all of it. Even worse, she had no way of explaining why she suddenly fell into Sang Wan Ci's embrace, because she didn't even know where this electricity shock came from. The fact that she didn't wail at the pain was already a major accomplishment for her. She rubbed her legs that felt like jelly as she started thinking of an excuse when the accursed voice in her mind spoke again. System notification, Administrator A5 has successfully connected, wishing you a happy cooperation. Then, a male voice rang out. System Administrator A5, here to serve you wholeheartedly, you can just call me Lao Wu, 4. Lao Wu was flipping through the files in the control room when he looked up lazily at the screen and froze, saying, "Oh ho. Seems like I came at a bad time." Chapter 2. The scene in front of him was overflowing with citrus power. 1. Holding on to a romance script, Lao Wu was just about to turn away when he finally reacted. Wait, these two are the protagonists of this romance story. Then what was he turning away for? The job of the system is to matchmake the protagonists, and seeing such a scene was to be celebrated. Not only was he not going to go, but he was also even going to wave a flag and scream internally for these two protagonists that were progressing at an insane pace. Say yes, say yes. Where's your ring? How could you propose without a ring? Oh, got it, propose first, ring later. Hearing his voice in her mind, then looking at the person in front of her, Zhi Wei quickly decided to settle the problem in front of her first once her strength came back. Rubbing her kneecap and slowly getting up, her mind whirled as she opened her mouth under Sang Wan Ci's alert gaze, saying. Pausing, she didn't know what to call her, so she stopped. But without waiting for her to continue, Sang Wan Ci quickly covered Zhi Wei's mouth. A clean, elegant fragrance wafted into Zhi Wei's nose, matching Sang Wan Ci, elegant and attractive, yet aloof and out of reach. Even if she was standing right in front of Zhi Wei. Zhi Wei blinked and looked into Sang Wan Ci's beautiful eyes. Sang Wan Ci asked in a low voice, "You recognize me?" Zhi Wei didn't know what she was trying to do, so she nodded stiffly. Sang Wan Ci continued, "Please help me keep it a secret, I don't want to be recognized by others." She wasn't in a good mood. She had left her house to take a walk and de-stress, not wanting to be disturbed. It just so happened that she had seen Zhi Wei get knocked over by the kid. Sitting there holding her forehead for such a long time with nobody else caring about her, Sang Wan Ci had finally gone to check on her out of the goodness of her heart. Zhi Wei nodded and agreed, complaining in her heart, even a fool could tell that you don't want to be recognized, just by the way you're wrapped up. Sang Wan Ci thanked her in a soft voice, as mesmerizing as always. Zhi Wei suddenly thought about her life. Sang Wan Ci had always been so radiant and beautiful, beloved by the masses. In the end, she had become a top star, successful both in her career and her love life. Looking at the person in front of her, her eyes sparkling like stars, her skin white as ivory, too, even her voice felt like it had a charisma buff. No matter what words she said, it sounded incredibly attractive. She really lives up to the role of a protagonist. Zhi Wei accepted this outrageous character design without hesitation. Sang Wan Ci looked up and down, "Are you all right now?" Zhi Wei froze, unaccustomed to people caring for her, before she nodded. Sang Wan Ci looked at her red forehead before her gaze shifted to Zhi Wei's leg, the shock of being knelt to still present. A stranger pulling this stunt the first time they met, and she didn't even get an explanation. Sang Wan Ci thought Zhi Wei was a bit odd, but she didn't let it show on her face. She politely offered a word of advice, "If you're not feeling well, it would be best to go to the hospital." Then she left. Please read at Jolien Lien. WordPress. Calm as Zhi Wei watched her walk away, the desire to explain evaporated. Whatever, she was a transparent nobody anyway. Sang Wan Ci would forget her soon, along with whatever embarrassing things she did. Since that was the case, why expend energy and effort to explain? But this thing in her brain. Zhi Wei checked that nothing had dropped out of her bag, then hugged it tightly as she rubbed her head and asked as she walked, "Who are you?" "The system who's here to help you." Lao Wu didn't beat around the bush, giving her an explanation right away. "I just checked the system records. You've already accepted the entire script and you know the male lead is a man called Qiu Luo. But something went wrong in your world, so the male protagonist halo dropped onto your body accidentally and made you the male lead. Now, we can only go along with it. Since you're the male lead, you should do what a male lead would. Having accidentally changed the world, you need to immediately become the male lead and follow the script, restoring the natural order of this world, or a bug might appear and ruin the world. And I am the system administrator who is responsible for helping you to finish your missions and follow the script. Clearly, it was the standard hero saves the world shtick. Zhi Wei lowered her head and grumbled, complaining it was like a scam. An invisible nobody becoming the male lead, it was outrageous. Just the gender not matching up was outrageous. Even if it's an accident, it's also outrageous. Lao Wu was familiar with the suspicions of new hosts, and he asked calmly, whether it's a scam or not, didn't you already experience it just now? Which scammer can give you an electric shock out of nowhere? Zhi Wei couldn't help the surprised exclamation that came out of her mouth. What, it was you guys? Do you know, that really hurt. If it wasn't for her innate desire not to embarrass herself in front of a pretty girl, she would have been wailing in pain. Although she had already embarrassed herself in front of Sang Wan Ci. I know. Lao Wu said. Or else why would it be called a punishment? Zhi Wei? This was completely weird. Lao Wu continued, if the host completes the mission, there'll be a reward from the system. If you don't do it well, or if you take too long, then there'll be a punishment. It's fair. But that mission that caused you to be shocked just now, it was wrongly issued by the system and not part of the normal procedures. I'm very sorry, in the future, I'll give you a free pass to avoid one punishment. It was a bit of a shame. He had originally thought that this world was advancing so quickly without the need for the system, with the two protagonists able to run towards their happy ending hand in hand, and he could get off work earlier and rest. He didn't expect it to be a mistake. He sighed. What a pity, why didn't they just get married on the spot? Who cares if they're male or female, restoring the world storyline was most important. Please read at Jolien Lien. WordPress. Zhi Wei, no thanks, you can continue letting Qiu Luo be the male protagonist. I'm afraid of pain, I can't do it. You can. Listen to me. Besides, the male protagonist halo is already bound to you, it can't be changed. Ridiculous, I'm a woman. I don't care. If you don't complete the missions, I'll shock you. What sort of domineering electric god is this system? She was stunned and indignant, so she could only say, okay bro, no problem bro. Sorry, Zhi Wei's fear of pain would make her willing to listen to anyone. Zhi Wei, I won't cry for too long, just 1 or 2 months. JPG. There's another thing. Lao Wu lifted his hand and covered his lips, looking at the screen. You can talk to me mentally, I'll be able to hear it. Otherwise, you might be seen as a crazy person who talks to yourself. Having heard that, Zhi Wei came back to reality and looked around her, realizing everybody was staring at her weirdly and keeping their distance. There was even a person wondering if they should call the mental hospital and ask if a patient had escaped. Zhi Wei looked away calmly. It's fine, I'm a transparent existence, they'll forget about me soon. Thankfully, she had her transparent existence to save her from embarrassment. Wake up, Lao Wu said. You're the male protagonist with a halo now. This meant she had escaped from her transparent existence and she could now live like a normal human being. Nobody would ignore her again, and nobody would forget her in the blink of an eye again. Zhi Wei stopped, looking in front silently. Being able to live like a normal person, this was the miracle she hoped for ever since she was young. But after waiting in vain for so many years, her heart had grown cold and she stopped believing in miracles on this earth. Even if miracles existed, it wouldn't happen to a human made of air. But today, this miracle happened. You mean they can see me now? She asked, uncertainly. They weren't just looking at air, but they were looking at a human made of flesh and blood? Whatever she did, other people would remember it? Yes. With such a certain answer, her absurd and ridiculous life was suddenly turned upside down. Zhi Wei stood on the spot, her lips curling up in a smile without her knowing. This was unbelievable. But she still felt pleasantly surprised by this illusion. Until she realized one thing. Then won't Sang Wan Ci remember me suddenly kneeling on one knee? Ah, yes. Zhi Wei, will I have to meet her a lot in the future? Lao Wu, if the male lead doesn't meet the female lead more, then who else would you meet? Zhi Wei, alright, my 3 rooms and living room have been carved out. 3. After getting off public transport and walking home, Zhi Wei was still digesting the news that she had gone from being invisible to this world's male protagonist. As for explaining her kneeling on one knee, leave it till the next time they met, and the system had issued a new mission. Mission issued, sign on as an actress and fulfill the first encounter with the female protagonist, Sang Wan Ci. Time limit, 1 month. Zhi Wei? They still had to have an encounter? Hadn't their first encounter already been very memorable with her kneeling on one knee? The system seemed to have heard her complaint, refreshing quickly. System decision, mission first encounter, complete. Mission point +1, please read at Jiolian. WordPress. Please work hard, host. She knew this mission point. Lao Wu had explained, this was almost like a game. With enough points saved up, Chapter 3. In the end, Zhi Wei still ended up choosing Xingyu culture. Not out of any other reason, but simply because it was familiar. She had been an artist in Xingyu before, and even though it was a small company, it still hadn't produced any standout entertainers yet. Oh, she still had to resign from her current job and focus on acting to avoid getting shocked. Her resignation was smooth and the company didn't try to keep her either, because they couldn't recall how her performance was like usually. They didn't have a good impression, but they didn't have a bad impression either. There was nothing outstanding for them to put the effort in to try to retain. After Zhi Wei resigned, she packed up her workstation and left without a trace of sentimentality. This was the good thing about being transparent. No matter where she was or in what sort of situation, she could always leave without being too emotional about it, and others wouldn't be upset about it either. The people in the office watched as she left, and as they looked at each other, they felt as if they had forgotten something, as if they had forgotten to call her along for their dinner gatherings. As if they had forgotten about her in the past. It was as if their memory had been wiped and they couldn't remember anything, but at least from this moment on, they could remember one thing. Zhi Wei had once been their colleague. After everything had been handled, Zhi Wei started preparing for Xingyu Culture's audition. At the start, she was a bit worried, afraid that Xingyu wouldn't want her, so she made a lot of preparations and her heart calmed down because of it. If Xingyu didn't want her, then she would just change to a different company, or she could become an unsigned artist. A boat will naturally straighten when it comes to the pier. 1. And then she got signed by Xingyu without hesitation. You have a good face and body, and you have acting experience, even though it was a small role. And you have such a bright halo on top of your head, it's impossible not to see you. The male mother Lao Wu was calmly dissecting the reasons behind the decision in his control room. Hearing his voice and looking at the workers in front of her, Zhi Wei was in a bit of a trance. That's right. She had forgotten she was no longer that transparent person. It was her first time being the male lead, she hadn't yet gotten used to it. After signing the contract, the system's electronic voice rang out. System decision, mission sign on as an actress, complete. Mission point +1. Please work hard, host. Actress. She had become an actress again. Zhi Wei finally snapped back to reality, her eyes bright as she exchanged pleasantries with the Xingyu employees, shining like a mini sun. After she left, the 2 workers started gossiping. With such good conditions and such a beautiful smile, why did our company let her go before? I don't know, but I don't have any impression of her from before. It's odd. Honestly, me too. Maybe she was too understated in the past. Maybe. Zhi Wei got assigned to a small manager. It was apparently because Xingyu had an actress who had recently become popular, and all the more experienced managers were busy helping to pave her way to stardom and didn't have time to take care of the new entertainers, so they let the new managers handle them. The manager was called Wen Yao. She wore a pair of round spectacles and she had a baby face that looked younger than her 24 years of age. She was younger than Zhi Wei by 2 years, and she looked quite obedient. Wen Yao stretched out a hand, her eyes shining with anticipation. "Hello, Miss Lu." Zhi Wei looked above her head. There was a colored indicator there. It was a warm, pale yellow. After 10 seconds, it vanished. Lao Wu said this was called a role indicator. It was specially used for distinguishing the levels of people in this world. Pale yellow meant they were inconsequential passers-by. This ability had just been activated a few days ago, and every time she met someone for the first time, the role indicator would pop up. At that time, she was curious about her own color. Lao Wu told her not to ask about it, she should look forward. Looking at it, she almost blinded herself. The gold color was dazzling and as bright as a 3-kilowatt light bulb, exaggerated almost like it was a special effect on television. It didn't seem like a protagonist's halo, it was more like the golden halo of Buddha. It would definitely be easy to ward off evil spirits with it. Wen Yao realized Zhi Wei was looking at her head, and so she touched her hair, asking confusedly, "Is there something on my head?" Zhi Wei immediately came back to her senses. No. I was thinking your hair's really well maintained, so I took a second look." Wen Yao rubbed the back of her head embarrassedly. "It's not that good." Having muddled through, Zhi Wei exhaled in relief. The next second, the new mission came crashing down. Mission issued, complete an audition. Time limit, 5 days. Zhi Wei? Did they consider that with this ridiculous time limit, no movies might be selecting leads within these 5 days? No, this system was just trying to find ways to shock her. Zhi Wei asked experimentally, "That, Miss Wen?" "Wen Yao, just call me Xiao Yao." Zhi Wei changed her words quickly. "All right, Xiao Yao, are there any movies currently casting?" "There is." Wen Yao replied, "There's one tomorrow. It's a Xianxia 2 script called Questioning Deity Sect 3. I was planning to bring you to the audition." And then she grabbed Zhi Wei's hand and said emotionally, "I'm very happy you're so proactive. Work hard, I believe as long as you put in the effort, you'll get the results." She didn't expect this manager to be so passionate. Zhi Wei hurriedly agreed. Questioning Deity Sect, she searched her memory for it but couldn't find any information on this movie. She realized that as long as it didn't have anything to do with the male or female leads, the system wouldn't bother giving that information. Sometimes if it was related, but it wasn't too important or closely related, it would be omitted as well. Wen Yao continued, "Questioning Deity Sect still hasn't selected their leads yet." Zhi Wei didn't have any expression. With her current status, she had no way of getting a leading role. As long as she could get a role in the show and make her first steps, it was most important. And the female lead, Sang Wan Ci, according to the script, she should be getting ready to shoot a variety show with the original male lead, Qiu Luo. So Zhi Wei would have to work hard as a male lead, or she would never get the chance to work together with Sang Wan Ci, and she could never fulfill her mission to repair the world's storyline. And she would have to be shocked. She didn't want to be shocked. The next day, it was a pleasant, clear morning with a slight autumn breeze. The van was on the road, with Sang Wan Ci sitting behind watching a fan video on her tablet. It was about her and another male celebrity, Qiu Luo. The two of them had looks that had been claimed to be the best in the industry, but as new celebrities who debuted at the same time, they had never worked together till date. But this didn't stop the fans from cutting videos. A particular site had plenty of such videos with many looks fans, screaming they were hungry, wanting the two of them to work together. Sang Wan Ci looked at it impassionately, not feeling anything inside. Her manager, Zhang Jia, hung up the phone and seeing as she wasn't talking, she looked over and smiled. The fans were just playing around. "What, you watch these too?" Zhang Jia's full name was Zhang Xianrui, and she was a professional manager. She had short hair, she dressed professionally, and she was pretty and mature, dedicated to her work and conscientious. Sang Wan Ci had been under her ever since she debuted, and Zhang Jia was one of the few who knew Sang Wan Ci's true identity. Zhang Jia held her phone and suddenly thought of a possibility, so she looked at Sang Wan Ci, who had an unchanging expression, and asked half-jokingly, Wan Ci, do you? No. Sang Wan Ci knew what she was going to say next, and she immediately denied it. He's not my type. If I liked him, why would I need to reject the variety show with him in it? The TV producers these days were like hunting dogs, able to sniff out prey no matter how far away it was. On the web, someone had shipped her and Cho Luo, and the production team had invited them onto the show, wanting to borrow their popularity to boost the ratings of the show. But she refused. Right now, she had to shoot shows. It was more important to elevate her own abilities. Zhang Xianrui thought that what she said made sense, so she raised an eyebrow and asked, casually, then what is your type? Sang Wan Ci stayed silent for a moment, then replied, I don't know, it's not someone like him, in any case. Zhang Xianrui didn't know where her strong opinions of Cho Luo came from, but she still offered a warning. Jokes aside, right now, your career is more important. Sang Wan Ci nodded. Relax, Zhang Jia, I know. It was too foolish to ruin her own career over a man. Besides, she had to use results to prove to her father that her decision was right. How could she let a smelly man ruin her efforts? If she really did that, not only would she look down on herself, her father would look down on her too. Questioning Deity Sect was a show with a strong female protagonist, and the main storyline was about My Life is My Own, talking about how the female lead, Xiao Jing, went from an ordinary sect disciple to the leader of an immortal sect. The role Zhi Wei was auditioning for was the role of Xiao Jing's junior sister, the innocent sect leader's daughter. She loved to follow behind her sect. Chapter 4. Zhi Wei could no longer understand the twists this plot was taking. Who secretly changed the script in the hands of the female lead? Why else would she not be following it? Zhi Wei was done with being pranked. She chose to seek assistance from the knowledgeable Lao Wu. The female lead is not following the plot. How is this possible? Lao Wu didn't reply immediately, taking his time to think in silence. Since even the male protagonist Halo could change owners, then the plot could certainly generate some small changes that didn't matter too much. As long as the two leads had a beautiful, romantic, loving happy ending, everything could be smoothed over. And in a sense, Sang Wan Ci could be said to be following the original script. In the original script, she was already preparing to work together with the male lead, with their first encounter happening. But now the male lead was Zhi Wei, so Sang Wan Ci coming to audition for Questioning Deity Sect was also considered preparing to work with the male lead. Looking at it that way, the female lead was following the plot. Thinking about it, Lao Wu calmly reassured Zhi Wei, it's okay, small problem, don't panic. If even the professional said it was a small problem, then Zhi Wei, this replacement male lead, had nothing left to say. Whatever, it's fine, it's okay. Please read at Julian Lian. WordPress. As long as she didn't need to suddenly say stuff like, I like you to Sang Wan Ci, it's fine. Following which, she thought of the fact that she needed to explain things to Sang Wan Ci. She wasn't scamming her that day. She didn't mean to kneel down on one knee either. It was all an accident. Don't think of her too ridiculously, this child was innocent. Thinking about it, she asked Wen Yao to head outside first and wait for her as she prepared to go talk to Sang Wan Ci. Wen Yao had just been her manager for a few days and didn't know much about Zhi Wei's personality. Seeing that she was going to talk to Sang Wan Ci, she suddenly felt a bit worried. Sang Wan Ci was more popular than Zhi Wei, and she even had Zhang Xianrui, someone that anybody in the industry had to give face to. Neither of the two were people to be trifled with. As a small manager and a new actress, they had to be cautious about how they acted. Wen Yao quickly pulled Zhi Wei to a stop, asking, what are you doing? We can't randomly offend people. Zhi Wei? She scratched her face in confusion. Do I look like I'm going to pick a fight? Please read at Julian Lian. WordPress. Wen Yao spoke hesitantly, that's not it, I was worried. Worried you would stir up problems and be disliked. Zhi Wei understood and reassured her, don't worry, I'm not someone who likes to cause trouble, there's just a misunderstanding that needs to be cleared up. Thinking about it with furrowed brows, Wen Yao said, then go ahead, I'll wait for you here. Zhi Wei went ahead. The moment Sang Wan Ci stepped into the hall, she immediately saw Zhi Wei. It was probably because their initial encounter was so memorable, even her line of sight was drawn to Zhi Wei. After she managed to get a clear look at the other's face, her eyebrows creased lightly. She clearly had not expected the other person to be here. What an odd coincidence. Back then, she had not thought the other person was a colleague in the industry. An odd colleague who would kneel down on one knee the first time they met. Seeing Zhi Wei suddenly walking over to her, Sang Wan Ci's eyes filled with wariness. Zhi Wei was stunned, her feet stopping as well. Asking uncertainly, am I mistaken? Why do I feel like the way she's looking at me isn't like how she should be looking at normal people? Lao Wu, well, no normal person would kneel on one knee the first time they meet. Zhi Wei. Thanks, she embarrassed herself. If that was the case, then she needed to explain the misunderstanding even more. Zhi Wei had no choice but to drag along the 3 rooms and living room she carved out and awkwardly say to Sang Wan Ci, Miss Sang, I wanted to explain about last time. Things aren't like you think. She was talking, but she didn't dare to move an inch, afraid Sang Wan Ci would turn and leave. Her expression was sincere, a pair of bright almond-shaped eyes looking incredibly innocent. Sang Wan Ci gazed at her silently. Even though her looks weren't the type to catch everybody's eyes at once, she did have delicate, clear features and she looked comfortable with a natural sense of innocence that wouldn't put people on guard. She didn't seem like someone who would lie. Zhang Xianrui turned her head to ask Sang Wan Ci, you two know each other? Sang Wan Ci shook her head lightly and replied honestly, we've only seen each other before. Then she continued, Zhang Jia, go ahead, I'll wait for you here. Zhang Xianrui looked at her then patted her shoulder, wait for me here then, I'll quickly arrange things then come back. Sang Wan Ci obediently nodded. When Zhang Xianrui walked away, she finally looked at the frozen Zhi Wei. Zhi Wei stood at her original spot, holding her fingers, like a child who had been punished to stand there, pitifully. What did you want to say? Sang Wan Ci took the initiative to speak. Zhi Wei looked overjoyed, quickly taking 2 steps forward. But after looking at Sang Wan Ci's face, her movements became careful and she eventually maintained an appropriate distance. Wen Yao, who was standing behind, was completely lost. What was she doing? When did her actress know Sang Wan Ci? Zhi Wei also felt awkward, touching her fingers as she called out, Miss Sang. She continued, it was a complete accident the last time, I definitely had no intentions of scamming you. At that time my legs went weak. I didn't stand stably enough, so I fell towards you, I'm really sorry. Sang Wan Ci lifted an eyebrow slightly, half in disbelief, really? Really? She emphasized. Miss Sang, please think about it. Scamming is for extorting money, if I really wanted to scam you, why didn't I grab onto you and shout for compensation instead of letting you go? Sang Wan Ci thought this was logical and nodded. Zhi Wei continued, as for my legs going weak. Sang Wan Ci suddenly looked at her with wide-open eyes. Sang Wan Ci looked mature and elegant. Gracefulness and regality seemed to be imprinted into her every movement, making others unable to look away. It also made others feel like she wasn't easily tricked or fooled. As if someone fooled her today, 500 men in suits would be storming their doors tomorrow to inquire on them. And from Zhi Wei's limited knowledge, with her identity, she really could find 500 men to deal with people, or more. Zhi Wei didn't want to be inquired about, but being honest and saying there was an electronic system in her body sounded even more like a lie. So she could only muddle her way through. In everybody's daily lives, it's not like your legs don't suddenly go weak, right? Sang Wan Ci didn't speak. Please read at Julian Lien. WordPress. The two of them looked at each other and time felt as if it was being stretched. Even the seconds became long and arduous. In the silence, Zhi Wei felt like she was being too ridiculous and that she was going to be inquired about. Everyone was silent. Sang Wan Ci's silence was the inquiry of 500 men tomorrow. Tough, it was too tough. A transparent existence, trying to be a good male lead was too tough. She was hanging in silence with Sang Wan Ci when the system suddenly appeared to break the tension. Mission issued, tell female lead Sang Wan Ci the following lines: "You're a bit freakish today, freakishly good looking." Time limit, 6 minutes. Zhi Wei. Ah, this oily smell that's wafting through the air. It's hard. Her fists were hard. In the past, I only knew you were a king of electricity, I never thought you dabbled in oil fields. With this occurrence, she would only have met twice with Sang Wan Ci. Saying such lame pickup lines on the second meeting, is there a hole in your brain? Was the original male lead Qiu Luo such an oily person? This is too oily, she complained. Lao Wu blandly reminded her, you still have to do it, within 6 minutes, or you'll be shocked again. Do you want to kneel on one knee in front of Sang Wan Ci again? Zhi Wei. She rather not. Or else Sang Wan Ci would probably really equate her with a mental patient. But she still wanted to fight back, so she asked, can't you adjust the level of punishment? High-ranking administrator Lao Wu, I can dot. Zhi Wei suddenly saw hope. I really think that saying this stuff the second time we met is a bit too ridiculous. As my mommy fan, aren't you planning to rescue me? Lao Wu said righteously, yes, I'm not planning to. Because I'm a career fan and a CP fan. To get you two into a CP, I'm duty-bound. Hurry up, grown-up kids should know how to create sweetness on their own. Zhi Wei. Sheesh, what a career fan and CP fan. She was speechless. Sang Wan Ci had finished her silent contemplation and thought that Zhi Wei did make some sense. It seems like she was the one who misunderstood her that day. Since it was a misunderstanding, she should apologize. She was just about to open her mouth when Zhi Wei's voice floated into her ear, a bit of awkwardness audible. Miss Sang, you're a bit freakish today, Sang Wan Ci? She didn't understand, freakish how? Zhi Wei pressed her lips together tightly, her heart lurching. Freakishly good-looking. Sang Wan Ci. She silently took 2 steps back. System decision, mission completed. Mission points, +1. Please read at Jolien Lien. WordPress. Zhi Wei's heart was tired. Look at this person taking 2 steps back. Qiu Luo being able to flirt with a beauty like Sang Wan Ci using such oily lines. Chapter 5. As Sang Wan Ci fell into deep and shocked contemplation. Far on the other side, Zhi Wei, who was being talked about, sneezed. Wen Yao immediately wound up the window on the passenger side and nagged concernedly, it's already autumn, you have to take care of your body, don't fall sick. Zhi Wei burrowed deeper into her coat and replied lightly, thanks, you too. Silence fell upon them. Please read at Jolien Lien. WordPress. Zhi Wei lowered her head and unlocked her phone, habitually scrolling through Weibo silently as she saw that Bai Meng proposed to buy a fan result on the hot search. Wedding veil, kneeling on one knee, everything was complete. Nobody would have thought a fan would pull it off. After looking at it for a moment, she was about to exit the page when she saw there was still a Sang Wan Ci's unedited photo topic on the hot search. Because of the system, now whenever she saw Sang Wan Ci, she would inexplicably be drawn to it. So she clicked into it and opened the photo. The image was a little blurry, but it couldn't hide Sang Wan Ci's beauty. The person in the photo was wearing a plain-colored dress with Zhang Xianrui in front of her as she was taking off a Bluetooth earpiece. Her skin was white as porcelain, her finger joints clear and distinct. The autumn wind rustled through her hair and dress, as her lowered eyelashes seemed to hide her grace. Everything in the world was reduced to merely being embellishments at that moment. This was the female lead, the darling of the world. That's what Zhi Wei thought. Speaking of which, she had to go back and brush up on her knowledge of Sang Wan Ci's works, otherwise, she wouldn't be able to live up to that sentence of always support she had said to Sang Wan Ci. It had just been politeness back then, and also to leave as good an impression as possible on Sang Wan Ci amidst all that black history to help them get along better in the future. But since she said it, she would do it. Thankfully Sang Wan Ci had just debuted this year, so she didn't have too many projects that would require a lot of Zhi Wei's time to watch. She was just thinking about it when Wen Yao suddenly asked, "Did you see the hot search?" She snapped back to reality, as if she was waking up from a dream. What? Wen Yao, hot search. Bai Meng was proposed to by a fan, didn't you see it? Oh, that, I saw it just now. The crazy devoted fans nowadays are really inexplicable, you never know what they're going to do next. But thankfully this one is okay, at least the artist wasn't harmed. Yeah, it's still alright. Zhi Wei's reply was a bit boring. She wasn't good at social interaction, she was used to quietly doing her own things. She was used to never being able to be part of a group, like before she resigned, she was always the quietest, most hidden person in the whole company. When other people were gathered around gossiping, she was silently sitting aside and working on her own things. She didn't need to say anything, nobody would care about her anyway. It was like she was an alien who had crashed onto Earth. This sort of situation played out every day, and it was already a part of her daily life. So even after getting the male protagonist halo, she still didn't have the ability to adjust right away, constantly thinking she was living in the past. A small white cabbage that nobody doted on, nobody loved. I can't really understand you. Wen Yao suddenly said. There are times when you're very withdrawn, like you don't like to socialize. But today, you went to find Sang Wan Ci on your own. Is it because Sang Wan Ci is more attractive? If it was because of Sang Wan Ci's face, then it was understandable. She had never seen such a good-looking person before in her life. Zhi Wei heard that and couldn't help laughing. That's not the reason. She thought about it and decided to tell a half-truth. There's no reason why I don't talk much, it's just that I lived very introvertedly before without friends and without much social interaction. I'm afraid I can't speak well, so I don't take the initiative to talk much. The reason I went to speak to Sang Wan Ci was because misunderstandings need to be cleared up. No friends? Wen Yao stayed silent for a few seconds before asking carefully, You were ostracized before? Are you alright? Startling, Zhi Wei raised her eyebrows and said half-jokingly, Yeah, I was ostracized before. But not in the same way others were, I was ostracized by the whole world. Doesn't it sound particularly tragic? Wen Yao. I might look like I'm easy to fool, but I'm 24 this year. What do you mean ostracized by the world, what sort of outrageous thing was that? Zhi Wei's face immediately grew solemn. Xiao Yao, when it comes to these things, it's better to believe it than to not believe it. Wen Yao. She was fooled, because Zhi Wei's expression was too serious to the point it was like she had really experienced it. Really? Zhi Wei's serious expression dissolved as she smiled. I fooled you. Wen Yao. Despicable, can you not fool an adult and leave her some face? This was the first time Zhi Wei has spoken so much to Wen Yao after joining Xingyu. Not about work, just idle chatter. She didn't plan on letting Wen Yao see her past, because Wen Yao had no duty to handle her emotions. Nobody had a duty to do it. It was good now, chatting about life lightly and looking forward. Thank you, Xiao Yao. She turned her head to look out the window, a trace of a smile on her lips. Thanks for your concern. She didn't hear an answer, seeing only the changing landscape outside the window. The sky was very blue and cloudless, while the wind whipped the tree leaves into a frenzy. In this moment, the world had become very quiet. You will have friends. As long as you work hard, you'll have everything. Wen Yao suddenly spoke. Zhi Wei Jia, I believe you're a good person. God won't let good people down. She was met with a mouthful of chicken soup. 1. Even the way she was addressed was changed. As a good person that God let down for 26 years, Zhi Wei froze for a moment as her smile got deeper. Alright, I'll work hard. At night, Zhi Wei blew dry her hair as she watched her laptop screen while sitting on the sofa. It was time to attend the Sang Wan Ci's works preparatory class. Magazines, interviews, advertisements and endorsements, movies and television shows, everything was included. As she watched, she made notes. After 2 hours, she had a general understanding of Sang Wan Ci. Sang Wan Ci was a very strong-willed person. Others could negotiate with her on anything, but they absolutely could not make a decision for her, as she hated that sort of feeling. Zhi Wei could understand, not many people on earth would be willing to accept it. But it was just that plenty of people couldn't be as free as Sang Wan Ci. She was young, she was capable, and she had a backbone. She also had the courage to reject what she didn't like. But it was strange. In the system's original script, the original male lead, Qiu Luo, was a man who loved to help his girlfriend make decisions. The two of them had quarreled over it many times. Qiu Luo clearly didn't hold the same values as Sang Wan Ci, and they weren't a match. Even like that, they could still become the top couple that everybody envied? Was the script really correct? She prodded the professional who was online. Lao Wu turned on his mic as the sound of pouring water entered her ears. Zhi Wei? What are you doing? Lao Wu, making coffee. Zhi Wei was shocked. What, you actually drink stuff? Lao Wu, nonsense, I'm a human so of course I drink stuff. What are you making such a fuss for? Zhi Wei was even more shocked. I thought you were some high-tech robot. Lao Wu. Wake up, that sort of toy is super expensive and the technology is complex. Right now, it can only be used to be security guards and follow simple commands. Zhi Wei, such as? Lao Wu picked up his cup, like catching rule-breaking administrators and punishing them. Zhi Wei was even more curious. What sort of punishment? Lao Wu tisked at her ever-increasing questions. Where did this curious baby come from? Stop asking questions about the system. Spit it out, what did you come to me for? Zhi Wei held in her curiosity and stopped asking. Lao Wu had said before, the system and the world were secrets not to be revealed, even to the host. But there were exceptions, it just remained to be seen if she could draw this exception. Back to the main topic, Zhi Wei brought up her doubts about the male lead. Lao Wu calmly said a sentence after hearing it, the protagonist halo covers up all flaws. The lead of this world naturally had to be the most successful person, whether it's their family background, looks or more. Everything had to be perfect. Although there could be small flaws with their personality that might result in small problems, but it wasn't a big issue as the halo would cover up these flaws and magnify the lead's own excellence. Zhi Wei furrowed her brows, so they don't love each other, but the halo. Lao Wu, you could say that. More accurately, the halo magnified their attraction to each other, so they love each other more. As long as there's love, people can change, they can even give up their lives for the other person. Zhi Wei's brows knit even tighter, but is that really fair to them? Without the protagonist's halos, would they really still like each other? Did anybody ask them if they were willing to be with each other? Why was it that just because they were the leads, they had to be together? It wasn't fair. Fairness doesn't exist in the world. Lao Wu poured his coffee, then turned.